Well, hello and welcome to episode number 24 of the Wonder of Stuff Vodcast, broadcast live on Google Hangouts on air every weekend. It's the place where you'll find news, information and commentary about science and engineering and technology from the past week and beyond, and anything else that we fancy to talk about from inside our little human brains. As always, my name is John Gardner, and to help us out on the journey to knowledge, let me introduce my colleagues as ever. Drumroll, please. Richard Smith and Ross Davidson. Say hello, chaps.
Hello, chaps.
Hello, chaps.
Jolly good. How are we today? We all okay?
Yep.
Jolly good. Let's get started. Without further ado, we'll get on to the running order of this week's exciting, death-defying episode. Well, at least Ross is going to start talking about Tesla Powerwalls.
Tesla Powerwalls, yes. So Tesla are a company that no doubt people will have heard of. They have a rather nifty electric car. And we mentioned Elon Musk a few times. He's the CEO of Tesla.
And a very rich man.
Very rich man, yeah. And last week, or just maybe the week before, they announced a new brand name called Tesla Energy. Now, what they revealed going to market with is basically battery packs, two kinds of battery packs, one called the Powerwall and one called the Power Pack, I think it's called. And basically, the Powerwall, there's a 10 kilowatt hour version and a 7 kilowatt hour version. And the idea is that these are designed for the home and small businesses as well. And the idea is that you can basically charge these batteries and use them, to provide energy for the home. A couple of places that we used is for one that I mentioned quite a bit is with solar power. So solar power, obviously, you can store the energy that you're getting in your house if you're out the house at work. You can store the energy from solar, and then you could use it. At the moment, quite a lot of solar people will sell that money back, that energy back to the grid, but sometimes that doesn't work. But the idea is you can store it and then use it overnight when there's no sunlight, or possibly also charge them overnight on off-peak energy and use it during the day when electricity from the grid's expensive. Now they're selling them for $3,500 for the 10 kilowatt hour one. Now, I did a little bit of back of a fag packet maths, and I reckon 10 kilowatt hour could probably run an entire household for about 5 hours. So well, 5 hours doesn't seem like a long time. It is quite significant, really. If you use less energy overnight, you could probably run your home overnight. So this is interesting because obviously, like I say, Tesla, you'll have heard of them with the cars. But essentially, the company's not really a car company. It's a battery company. It's just the electric car was like, it seemed the most obvious route to market for battery technology. So it's quite interesting that they're now moving into other spaces. And I was just reading that since they went to pre-sale with these, it's estimated they've taken $800 million worth of orders already. So they're basically sold out until the end of 2016 already. And that's the Powerwall is the home one. The Power Pack is for industry. The idea with the Power Pack is that it's like a stackable one. So the Powerwall's just a standalone that you have in your house. Power Pack, you can basically buy multiple ones.
Surely they've got the naming the wrong way around, haven't they? It would be much more sensible the other way around.
What, having a stackable one at home?
No, having
the name of the Powerwall.
Stack called Powerwall.
Well, I think the idea is the Powerwall actually mounts on your wall. So it's like a sort of like a like you would have a immersion heater or something like that. It sticks on your wall.
And it's big.
It is quite big.
I'm just looking at a picture of it here. Shall I share it out and see what?
Yeah.
This is the Powerwall, and this is this thing here. I mean, bear in mind that is a Tesla car.
Yeah.
And the Tesla car is based on that's a Jag, isn't it? A Jaguar.
I think so. Yeah.
Body,
yeah.
And so that's quite a big car. And this thing is huge up here.
It is quite big, but like I say, it's a 10 kilowatt hour battery, so it's pretty powerful. But yeah, those numbers, they reckon it was was it 38,000 reservations for the Powerwall. I assume just in America. I assume it's just America that they've got on sale. But it's an interesting one because people have been talking about sort of like this potentially being a worry for energy companies. Because if you can get to the point where you can run a home basically off grid, which obviously you need battery, you need storage for the energy to be able to do that feasibly. You're not going to be able to generate solar or wind energy on demand all the time. It might be sort of quite a big shift in terms of people actually being able to survive off grid.
That was my first thought, was because obviously solar panels has become quite popular, and a few people in my neighbourhood have got them now. But when I've read into doing it myself, the main catch is the fact that you obviously supply the energy goes direct to the grid, and you just get a subsidy back, don't you? Partly subsidised by the government, partly by the power company giving you credits, but essentially you still have to involve the electrical supplier. Whereas this battery technology is going to be maybe not initially, but eventually going to mean that, like you say, you could just power the battery and then you can store the electricity, because that's the problem with power, isn't it? The ability to store it.
Exactly. Yeah.
To be honest, though, I think this is going to be more of a pragmatic, practical solution for switching around I think we'll still have a power grid, but I think from now at the moment, where the power grid is your primary source, and anything else that we've got will be your backup. I think it'll switch around that your grid will be your backup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which would be, it'd be interesting to know how that would actually work from the terms of the power grid, because obviously they need to know what the energy demands are going to be so they can supply the energy without it, running out. You owe too much demand, you'll have like brownouts and blackouts and stuff. So it'd be interesting to know how they would be able to manage that if it was a backup, because how do they predict that the backup's going to be used? Obviously, the normal consumption, they know how many people are connected. They can predict, the break in a film or whatever, everyone puts their kettle on, that sort of thing. But how would they do that if they were the secondary source, like you say?
Well, it would be easier, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, how do you predict it? That's the thing. Well, if everyone's connected, what you're doing is predicting.
Yeah, but it's not going to be overnight, though, is it? It's going to be very, very gradual. So that it means that if in 25 years' time, 25% of homes are self-sufficient, you just need to provide 25% less power, surely, don't you?
I suppose that would be the thing. I'm thinking of sort of like the end game rather than the gradual.
Yeah.
And if you did sort of assume that those 25% weren't, if they were going to use it, it would be a small percentage of it. Yeah, I suppose you could cope with that.
Presumably, the end game would be everyone with solar panels who can, everyone with a small wind turbine in their back garden, and everyone with high capacity batteries, and then basically
the power companies go bust.
Like you were saying before, is just as a backup.
Yeah.
And then the grid's all on renewables as well, I suppose, at that point. It's better for countries like us than the US, though, isn't it? Because presumably they're going to have a challenge there in that energy is domestic, whereas us, it's import, isn't it? Are we 75% import or something like that?
Yeah.
So for us, it wouldn't be as challenging because there's no domestic hostility to a battery technology, whereas in the States, it's going to be massive.
Apparently, in the States, 1/3 of all fossil fuels consumed in the States is for electricity production.
Yeah, which is bad.
2,000 million metric tons of carbon dioxide produced yearly, I assume.
And how much wastage goes into their vehicles as well, because it seems as though the average car over there is still a 30 mile per gallon car and things like that, and they pay nothing on tax for that fuel pretty much, don't they?
Yeah. But it looks like it's been a popular thing in America, like I say, with the amount of orders they've had. So,
well, here's another thing. Another thing in America, whether it would work better in America, because America, they don't have a national grid like we do. They still have regional grid structures. Mm-hmm. So they're a lot more prone to brownouts because of that way that they generate the power. So I'm just wondering if the take-up, the consumer take-up would be much greater because of that, issue. Because I know there's whole sections of the country reasonably regularly, and I say reasonably regularly in terms of, like a first world country. They have huge sections of country. They have brownouts.
Mm-hmm.
I know there was there was one on the West Coast just before Christmas, and there was one on the East Coast at the start of last year, I think. Mm-hmm. Which you don't expect that to happen at all for a country that's as advanced as the United States.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that might be why it's taking off there. Of course, there's nothing to say it wouldn't take off here, but I think there's other things that you need to talk about. There's like, do we have enough? Our solar panels, are they efficient enough from getting from the photovoltaic cells? Are they efficient enough just to get the light from a house that's in the northeast of England, which doesn't get a great deal of sun?
Well, I was reading about that, and I don't think there's as much. It's as much of a barrier as people think. People think, oh, well, that's all good and well in California, but here that's not going to work. But it's not to do with it's light, isn't it? It's not to do with necessarily how much sunshine you're getting. It's to do with the light. But when I was reading it on Money Saving Expert, actually, I've got a really good write-up of it, saying practically what can you expect to get. And but yeah, if you've got a sort of average, well, it's hard to say what an average size house is, but a standard family home, 3-bedroom family home, they've got the maths on there for what that would be, and that's with where you send it back to the grid, and you can make very good savings with it. And like I say, it's subsidised here, but it generates decent amount of electricity if you cover your whole roof of a average family size home, so you can get quite good exposure. Because obviously the thing is, they still work even when it's cloudy. It's not that they stop working.
Yeah, it's not like there's not like
just reduce the efficiency of generation.
Yeah. And obviously, if you're tied in with the grid and all you're getting is, I suppose that's the beauty of it, is that you're not having to rely on it. You just, whatever you get is a bonus and reduces your electricity bill by that amount. So if you've got $5,000 kicking around, it's almost a no-brainer. If I suppose there's other investments you could always make, but if you're not into investments and you've got $5,000 kicking around, invest in these cells while the subsidy's going, and then you're just going to get it over time. After 20 years, the way electricity's set to go up, you can't fail but to win.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if they're gonna. There's plans to put these on sale in this country. I suppose they'll see how well they sell in America. And then we'll see whether we see them available in this country or not.
And you were talking about the long game before. I mean, does this mean that we're ultimately flips between us being tied into the power grid, the power companies, to being tied into a Tesla? Because if you over a certain amount of time, if you switch to this as your primary source of power, and like you say, the energy companies do reduce their amount, the generation capacity, then you won't be able to switch back and go, I've decided not to go on Tesla. We'll have to go back onto the grid full time, and then they'll be like, shit, all these people are moving back. Well, we can't build a power station that quickly.
We'll just buy some more power in for abroad. Someone will still be making it.
Yeah, but
presumably competitors will emerge, though. I was just kind of thinking maybe the exciting thing for the average consumer is when the Chinese rip-off starts coming into the market, and the Chinese, and I was thinking the same with the panels as well. The photovoltaic cells that will come down most dramatically when the Chinese start making their, well, they have, haven't they? They've started making
yeah. I mean, the prices have like halved within the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Of photovoltaic cells, yeah.
And once they're past the Chinese R&D element and they're just making them, once loads of companies jump on it within China as well, that's when you're really going to see them come down. It's often it sometimes takes deceptively long, doesn't it, for prices to come down, like LED screens and things like that. You think when they first come out, the price comes halves, but then stays at half for quite a long time, doesn't it? And then as a new technology comes out, that's when you really see it go down.
Well, that's the thing. Well, there's still the demand, and people are quite happy to pay those prices. That they'll stay at those prices. Like you say, a new technology, and then suddenly the price plummets.
It does amaze me. I mean, use the example of LED screens and stuff, but it amazes me how cheap a decent size LED television is nowadays. It's just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you would have that with it. Well, it's just basic market forces, isn't it? More.
I think it's exactly what Ross says. I think you get a drop after the return on investment for the R&D. You get another drop when the competitors all come into the market, and then most importantly, you get the biggest drop when the next generation of technology comes out and no one wants the old one, and then they just sell off huge quantities of it. That's when you get the best drop, isn't it?
Yep, indeed. So interesting. So we know not when or if they're going to be selling them in the UK as yet.
No, don't know.
But it's if the battery technology is as good as they say it is, then this could be a game changer.
What's the lifespan on one then?
The lifespan, I'm not sure. They don't say. I mean, I suppose it's a lithium-ion, so yeah. It'll be one of those. It can be recharged 100,000 times or something like that. So, I suppose I don't think they'll be designed to do. I was saying technically you could probably run your household overnight. They're not designed to do that. I don't think. I think they're more just on demand if you need them. I would imagine. But yeah,
that scenario in the picture is the first one that's the most immediate to address. If you've got an electric car, you want to buy an electric car, and you're worried about the costs of running that car, and you could, if you can put solar panels on your roof and stick one of those in your garage, then that's probably problem solved in terms of fueling your car. That's it. Your car's done, because there'll certainly be enough capacity in the battery for that, won't there? And there'll certainly be enough. Well, there'll almost certainly be enough sunlight to do a car once a day if you do average mileage, so that solves that problem.
And with the money you save, you can go out and buy a very expensive Tesla instead of a slightly more cheaper
presumably
Renault Zoe or whatever.
18 grand electric car. I know not everyone has the money to spend on an 18 grand electric car, but say you're in the position where you have that and you can buy this £3,500 battery, and you can buy the £5,000 cells for your roof, and the lifespan on the cells and the battery is 20 odd years, then 3 cars down the line, presumably that'll then be cheaper than fueling a petrol or a diesel car, won't it?
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a while to get all that back, though, I guess.
Yeah, and it'll pay for itself eventually.
Yeah. And also, you'll be rest assured that you're green, or will you be? Will we be throwing all these batteries in landfill, and it's causing an even worse disaster than just hauling fossil fuels into your car?
They'll be washed up on the beaches of Nigeria.
There'll be seagulls with 4-ton batteries hanging around their necks.
Excellent. Well, that's a good topic to start off with. A new technology, and obviously the perfect way to solve all of our power issues, which is great. Now on to Richard now, and he's going to talk to us about remote-controlled cockroaches.
Yeah, this came out in 2011. It was announced in 2011 by a Michigan-based company called Backyard Brains. Initially, it was an effort to get school children in the US interested in neuroscience. Apparently, that's an area that's really lacking in the US. Science generally is lacking in the US in the education system. But neuroscience is basically not covered at all. So it's an attempt to get people to engage, school children in particular, engage with that. And what it is, the cockroaches have, or certain species of cockroaches, certainly the ones that are common in the US, have a cluster of nerve cells and brain cells that are separate from the main brain, which receives the signals from the antennae and controls the legs of the cockroach. And what you do is you have this little chip that you implant the electrodes on the cockroach, trim off its antennae, and then what you can do is control the cockroach remotely with an app on your phone.
Are you saying these are genuine biological cockroaches, real cockroaches?
Yeah, real live cockroaches. And the company received funding this summer, and they've gone to market now. These chips are for sale in the US.
Why would?
Well, to engage children in neuroscience, and so basically, it's showing you how a brain works. You can send electrical impulses and blah blah blah. This is what the company says. This isn't my point of view, as you can probably guess. But the reason it's come back into the press recently is companies or individuals are calling for them to be used in earthquake disaster recovery. So basically, to manufacture a small, maneuverable, durable robot is quite expensive and time-consuming. To get them to somewhere like Nepal in a disaster scenario is difficult. But if you had these chips, they're quite easy and cheap. For instance, £69 is the cost for one of these chips. So if you have access to cockroaches and you have access to these chips, you can actually use it, seemingly. You could stick one of these chips in a cockroach, control it, and find people buried in rubble.
And then we go, cockroaches, get them away from me.
I think they'll be used to that.
See, I was actually watching there was a video, and I think it was the Backyard Brains video, so I was watching that last week. And it was interesting how it worked. And my actual thought on it was, is this really sort of like doing
is this
what
real?
It says?
Full stop.
Well, the way they attached this to the cockroach was like Richard says, you trim its antennas, and then you basically sort of like a little wire goes inside each of the antennas and then is glued in. And that's attached to a chip that's stuck in its back. And it showed this cockroach moving around. And all I was thinking was, hold on, are they not just sort of like, they're just stimulating the antenna, and is the cockroach not just sort of going, ow, 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 ow?
Well,
So,
I don't know
it's just sort of,
if it's going out.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, if I had antennas and someone had put a wire in it, I would probably go out. But you know what I mean? It's sort of, it seems, I know it is controlling it, and it is sort of like using its nervous system to do it. But it's like sort of like, you know how if you get a scratch, you itch it, an itch, you scratch it. It's like that. It's like doing that, and it's just sort of moving because of a reaction to a stimulus rather than being controlled like you would imagine it.
How is
controlling your brain.
How is that distinct from it receiving stimuli through its normal antenna?
I don't know, but that was just the sort of feeling I had. But it was an interesting video. They didn't mention what happened to the cockroaches after you played with them. I assume they're called.
Well, I would presume they were pretty much dead and useless because they've got no antennae left.
Yeah, exactly.
So they wouldn't be able to find food or.
I don't particularly have any, feelings toward cockroaches either way, but I imagine kids getting the chance to do this would probably really enjoy it.
Well, it has caused a stir in the US, and it's caused a stir wherever it's going to be introduced because, bioethicists have been arguing, is it ethical? I think the main worry, obviously there's concern for the cockroaches, but maybe a greater concern is, do we want to be teaching children to sort of use animals in this, is this progressive science, or is it a bit like you're suggesting, is it very reductive and not really telling you very much? And also, is it teaching children, well, it's okay to basically do what you like with animals, and, does it send that message?
This just sounds like it's a case of speciesism, where, I think we've talked about this before, Richard, and where, your cuddly cat is fine, but, everything else is fair game or whatever.
I think it's a tricky one because it's hard to know where cockroaches. It's hard to know for me where our moral concern with cockroaches should be. They are social animals. They do communicate with each other, but I don't think we should have a moral concern for them like we do have a moral concern for cats.
Do we know how many neurons a cockroach has?
I think it's pretty low. I think they're often touted as an example of very, very low. I think it's surprising how much they can achieve with a very, very low. And I think they're actually an example of how maybe that neuron scale for how concerned we should be about animals doesn't quite work. But cockroaches are interesting animals. For example, there's only 30 pest species, so that they're thought of as a pest organism. But there's only 30 pests out of 4,600 species of cockroach. So vast majority of them are sort of rainforest ground floor dwelling organisms that you don't see in populated areas. So there's about 5 or 6 which are the well-known ones that you see on holiday scuttling up the walls, and they're not at all representative of cockroaches as a whole. They're a very diverse group.
Presumably the ones. Sorry, Ross?
I was going to say, is it an urban myth, or would the cockroaches survive the nuclear holocaust?
They're no better at it than arthropods of a similar size. Basically, it's one of those, a bit like, when I said about the ants can lift proportion. It's kind of like it's what you would expect of an organism that isn't as sensitive to radiation and things like that. If it was in the blast zone, it would be destroyed in the same way as anything else would be destroyed. But yeah, its susceptibility to radiation is lower, but it's not. There's organisms certainly that are better than a cockroach. So that's one that seems to have gained popularity despite there not being anything particular about a cockroach. Yeah.
Is that just because that we know that cockroaches have been around for a lot longer than some other species, and the human instinct is to say, oh well, if they've survived this long, they must be,
I guess so.
Kill them.
People consider them as survivalists because they're they seem to be able to eke out a living in urban environments. But like I say, that's not representative of most cockroaches live in a ecological niche, and if they were taken out of that niche, they wouldn't survive. You know what I mean? They would need this level of humidity, this food type, this blah blah blah. They couldn't survive without all of that. The ones that you see when you're on holiday scuttling up the walls, they're quite good, and they happen to be well adapted to urban environments in the same way as a rat is, in the same way as a pigeon
So you're
is.
saying the majority of cockroaches are a part of the rainforest ecosystem, so they're like everything else, and they and if you took them out, like,
I mean, rainforests I just say rainforests because they're the most biodiverse area, so I don't know the numbers, but I imagine the majority of them are there. But there'll be desert-dwelling cockroaches, there's arid environment cockroaches, cockroaches are found in all continents apart from Antarctica. So
I do remember being on holiday in, where was it? Greece, I think it was, years and years ago. And there was a cockroach that I saw crawling up the wall, and it was so big that when I threw my shoe at it, I actually hit it. Yeah.
Oh, you were just lucky on that occasion.
It was huge. But it didn't kill it, did it? Just crawled away.
It's not. Well, look, it survived a nuclear bomb, so it can definitely survive a shoe.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, yeah, that's it. It's my worry is more the message that we send to children that speciesism. You're right. I don't really. I think people who have concern for animals being used run the risk of sounding ridiculous when they start talking about moral concerns for cockroaches. So you've got to be careful there. But the thing that you want is, my 2.5-year-old son stands on ants, and that's his natural instinct is to stamp on them, and I don't know, he's getting that from no one. I guess it's just part of human nature, but I'm teaching him, no, you don't do that. But then if he went to school and was being shown how you can just send electricity into a cockroach, and it kind of sends the opposite message of what I'd want them. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's not teaching him to respect other living things, really, is it? By teaching him to send electrical signals. But I would say if genuinely they can be used to rescue earthquake survivors, and I think that makes a good moral counter argument that, okay, these people are trapped, they're going to die, we've got this technology, it's usable, we can use it now, there's no alternative. If that's all true, then I think you could justify it under those circumstances, surely.
But yeah, I still don't understand how they could be practically used to find.
Well, they can be fitted with a microphone,
Right. Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
they could be fitting a microphone, and what you could do is release dozens of them, or one at a time until you find in different routes, and then send them right into the rubble. And if you hear a noise, someone's there. You hear no noise.
Suppose you could put a GoPro on top of them as well.
Yeah, I don't think the plan is for the cockroaches to actually rescue the people, John.
Like one of those dogs that shows up with a little barrel of whiskey and then he gets.
It's the St. Bernard of the insect world.
That was it, really. I mean, it's technology-wise, it's run off a coin cell battery. The electrodes are made of silver. The control is with a Bluetooth signal. So the technology is interesting. The fact that you can do it and manipulate an animal in that way is at least interesting to find out that that's possible.
So does this Backyard Brains, do they do any other similar sort of things, or is this just sort of like the main experiment that they've come up with?
I think this is the main thing that they're known for. I'm sure they probably do other stuff, though.
Mm-hmm. I did see, while I watched that video as well, I saw another one which was similar about sort of controlling brains and neuroscience. It was I think it was a TED talk where someone got a volunteer and attached it was like a glove, and then they got another volunteer and they attached, there's a nerve that's really near the skin for your arm, and it's the one that controls like your gripping. And basically, they attached that to one person, and then when the first person went like that, the other person's hand went like that.
Right.
So you can sort of do that sort of thing with humans as well by stimulating the correct nerves. And the look on the person's face was quite something, as they were involuntarily creating a fist.
They did something like that in this year's Royal Institution Christmas lectures when they're all about hacking various bits of stuff that you've got around your home, and that was part of the trying to get a sort of holograms into your house and how far they've got.
Mm-hmm.
And this was that type of thing was used. There was somebody in another building who was affecting somebody else's hand. So it was interesting.
They had it on QI where they showed. I've seen it. A few people have done it, but they did it on QI last year, I think, where you can get a mannequin's arm and you cover your own arm, and then you
with a hammer.
a feather along it while you're doing it on your. So you do your own arm and someone else does the mannequin's arm at the same time, and you're looking at the mannequin's arm, and eventually you build a rapport with the arm. I don't know.
Yeah.
You build a connection. You build a connection with the mannequin arm, and then you can just hit it with a hammer, and you'll feel it. You'll feel it for real. It just kind of shows. But the point that you raised is an interesting one, where you were saying, well, is it just a fudge? Is it just a trick? But then, well, yes, but also that is
how it works.
It's like you said yourself before. If it works, is it not the thing? I mean, if it does the thing, then it is the thing. I mean, what's the difference? But that's how you get into the whole, the whole philosophical discussion about what is consciousness, what is not. What is a decision? You get into all those interesting arguments. So at least if it stimulates those conversations, I think it's worthwhile. I think we could probably do the theory without the practical, to be honest, is my probably takeaway from it. But yeah, I think the reason it's come back in the news is that it's received the funding, and also that it's being touted as a possible rescuing people from earthquakes. And I don't know, what do you think about? What do you think about the two approaches then, as one as an educational tool and one as a means to rescue people from earthquakes?
It's interesting. I mean, I can see the benefit of both, to be honest. But I think your point of teaching it to children, and then them taking the wrong thing away from it, which would be, we can chop up creatures and do funny things, rather than thinking of the actual fundamental of what's happening. Obviously, the rescuing people from earthquakes, no one's going to say, oh no, that would be a bad thing. If there's any way of sort of helping, robots are always touted as being the drones or six-wheeled robots are always being touted as being what's going to be used for finding earthquake victims. To be honest, I don't think I've ever seen when there's been earthquakes, I've never seen anyone say, "Oh yeah, we discovered this person using anything other than people hearing them or digging." So
well, I think this is where this technology maybe can exploit that, though, is because the reason for that is it's just not practical. Like the theory, if you had that robot in your village at the time, perfect. But by the time you get it out there, the person's dead.
Yeah,
so
it's crazy just to get a load of people to shift rocks.
Yeah, at least if these chips are £61 a chip, you know, areas that are earthquake prone in the capital that can just have hundreds of them ready and send them out via courier, and you know, it's a lot more practical than getting it.
But I think what you were saying last week is that, you know, I mean, the countries, would use Kathmandu as an example. They're a very poor country. Are they going to spend lots of money on having little tiny things to put on backs of cockroaches?
No, but the money for that is a hell of a lot cheaper than having a robot ready, isn't it? That's the point.
They also need a £500 smartphone to control it.
That's true, and I think it's only a
3G signal. Which in an earthquake hit zone, they might not have that.
Yeah, I think it's you've got to have a particular phone at the moment. Is it a Motorola or something as well? Which no one's got one of them now. So
excellent. Right. Well, we'll leave that one there. But that's an interesting one.
Well, what was your reaction?
Well, my view. Well, my view. I go back to the feelings that I had when I became a vegetarian, which was all down to when we were doing a biology class and we were doing a dissection class, and I genuinely, I think we did a few. It must have been over a few weeks, and we were doing rats and we were doing fish and stuff like that. And I genuinely came away and said, "Well, I have learned nothing from that I couldn't learn from." Well, then I would have said a decent book, but now a computer model. And I still think that for teaching children, I still think that is.
I think that's probably sensibility has prevailed, though, because when Susan went to school, who was 7 years older than me, they were still doing bullfrog. Was it bullfrogs or just common frog? Anyway, they were still doing dissections of frogs even when she went to school. And by the time I went, that was all done away with, hearts and frogs and all that. So that probably was as a result of that thought process, I guess, rather than political correctness gone mad. I think it probably was just sensible.
Because I tell you, Richard, in all honesty, what you just get is the kids who like blood, guts and gore would go and chase a girl around with an eyeball around the class.
Yeah.
And I was sitting thinking here, well, I am not learning anything from this, and I guarantee that they're not learning anything from this, other than how to, you know, chase girls around with eyeballs.
Would be interesting to do a follow-up study, because I bet it's very compelling to think along the lines of, were the kids stimulated during the class? And I bet the answer to that is definitely yes. Was that the class that they would say was the best class of the semester? And you could probably find evidence that would say yes. Do their
subsequently go on to do science?
Yeah. Do their careers and or even just their exam results improve as a result? And my guess would be no. So. Yeah. I don't know how useful it is as an education. As a fun, gimmicky type thing, I'm sure that it works, but I'm like you, I'm not so convinced. What about if it can save or find earthquake victims? You say it's more.
I don't know. I think it's just because I still don't fully grasp the whole how that would happen with lots of cockroaches going around with microphones. I just can't grasp it, because you can't. I don't know. I find it very hard to grasp that.
I mean, MI6 are already using it, you know, in your house. If you see a moth, that's all wired up, you know.
Oh dear. I don't know. I genuinely don't have an opinion on that, because I just think it's science fiction at the moment, and probably will be for forever. I think there's probably better ways of finding people, and it may very well be a load of humans going around going, "Shut up, we're listening." Right. Okay. Well, we'll pop on to the last topic of the evening. It's getting close to time, and this is mine actually. This is a topic that I've been interested in for a while, but I'm going to cover it this week because it's popped up in the news, but albeit not the mainstream news, but it has popped up on my field of recognition, and that is about solar sails. Now, before I tell you what a solar sail is, I'll give you an idea of the guy who first came up with the concept, and that's a Mr. Carl Sagan. Now, Richard and Ross will know who Carl Sagan is. He was rather an American astronomer. He was a cosmologist. He was an astrophysicist. He was an astrobiologist. He was an author. He popularized science in many forms, and all other. He was just, he was quite a really intelligent guy. He worked and research projects with NASA, and he was on the SETI project, which is the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which we've already mentioned before on this program. And he also came up with the concept of the pale blue dot, Earth being the pale blue dot, and every time you've heard that in a literary sense, used as a literary device, or in music as in a song, and I've just been listening to songs this week they've been, with the pale blue dot as a concept, and he came up with that. Well, basically, before he died in 1996, he had pneumonia, and he died in 1996. But before he died, a few years before he died, he came up with an organisation called the Planetary Society. And their concept was to take all of these ideas and theories and projects that he'd had on his go, and not just him. There was I think him and a couple of partners that he had, and to extrapolate on them, to find out more about them, to research the projects and see if they were worth going forward. And one of the things he came up with was this solar sail, or what they're calling it now, a light sail. And I'm gonna show you it now. I'll just show you this diagram. This is on their website, and basically what it is, this whole silver sort of square with this little black thing in the middle. This is the solar sail. Now, what actually happens here is these are mylar sheets, reflective mylar sheets. They're very thin, but quite strong. And the idea is that they are used as a source of fuel to power this little black thing in the middle, which is a little craft. Now, how they actually work is quite simple. It's basically Newton's third law, which is every action is an equal and opposite reaction. And what happens is you get a photon, which is a light particle, which hits the reflective surface on here, and it essentially delivers this sail a reflective double kick. So the first push of the photon comes from the sail stopping the photon, and the second shove complements the Newton's third law of motion. For every action, the equal opposite reaction, and occurs that the photon is accelerated away in the opposite direction, so it moves this sail along. And the whole point of this, why they're trying to investigate this, is a method of propulsion around the cosmos, because obviously when you put a rocket in space, fuel is very heavy. It has to carry its own fuel around, and it's very heavy. Well, the fuel is, in this case, it's the sun. The sun is the source of the fuel, and the photons hitting this sail is the way that momentum happens. So basically, the reason why I'm telling you about this is because this on the 20th of May, they're finally getting round to launching it and doing some tests on it. So they are going to launch it. I don't know how they're going to launch it this time, but they were going to launch it from an intercontinental ballistic missile, which has obviously had the warhead removed. They were going to initially they were going to use a Russian submarine to launch it, but I think what they're going to do this time is use a NASA research rocket to fire it into space, and they're looking for how the sail will deploy, and see if it will deploy. But they've got a couple of issues. They're using these. I'll show you it. I've got it on another screen here. This is the method. This is the whole device, and it's called a CubeSat. And CubeSat is much like, I'll just flick back from here at the moment. A CubeSat is much like what do you call those things on ships? Shipping containers. Shipping containers are all
containers on ships.
Yeah, containers on ships. Shipping containers are all designed for a standard spec, so each one can lock together and go around on the ships. Well, the CubeSat is designed to a standard spec as well, and they're all a 10 by 10 by 10 centimeter cubed. And the idea is that you pack all the stuff in that, and you can also get another 10 by 10 by 10 and plug them and click them together. And they're using them now. A lot of hobbyists are using them, and well, I say hobbyists, I mean sort of like slightly more professional hobbyists. But they're using them for lots of research projects and putting them as payloads in spacecraft to be launched. I'll flip back to this, and I'll show you how it actually works. So this is 3 of those CubeSats together. So it's a 10 by 10 by 30 centimeter. So it's like a big long loaf of bread essentially. And if I play it to you, you'll see how it unpacks. And if you look on here, so this is how it all unpacks. These silver bits here are actually what I showed you before, which is the sail. And it unpacks like that, and the sails will come out. That's the idea anyway. So they're on the 20th of May, that's what's going to happen. They're going to do a test flight. But the big problem is that they've just found, so they've packed it away all ready to go into the payload of this rocket. But they've just found that their stability control software is got a bug in it. So when it gets released and when it gets launched, it's going to start spinning. See? Now they've done computer models on it, and they reckon that they will be able to get telemetry back from it, because the problem is, of course, is when you're in space and you're getting telemetry, you have to line up your antenna with the ground antenna. But if it's spinning, you've only got a certain amount of time when you're going to hit that. So it is going to take photographs, and it is going to send them back, but they have got a very limited time, and they don't know whether the time facing the antenna is enough time to send the amount of bytes back of an image.
So they've found this issue in the software, but it hasn't launched yet.
No, it hasn't launched yet, but for some reason I don't think they can change it, or
right.
We're too close to it, and it's all packed away, and I don't think.
And they'll not be able to update the software.
Well, that's the problem. Yeah. That's the problem, because they are doing this on a shoestring. Now they've been trying to do this for the last 15 years, and it's kind of a comedy of errors. What happened? They gave it to the Russians. The Russians designed some of it. They packed it into their intercontinental ballistic missile. The intercontinental ballistic missile exploded. Then they tried it again a few years later, and I mean they've only got like $4.5 million to do the entire project. So they really are, at the end of their financing. But I thought I'd bring it up because I think hopefully they're gonna show pictures from it. But it would be a quite interesting thing.
They did quite well with that amount of money, really, in the scale of those projects of that type.
The problem is, though, they've also lost a lot of the momentum because there's other people beating them to it. I mean, at the time when they started the start of the 21st century, there was nobody else doing it. But now I think the Japanese have done a sail, and I think the Americans have done a sail. Mind you, they haven't continued on with it. They've just gone, yes, well, that's a proof of concept. We've managed to unveil a sail. Great. Now on to the next thing. I think these things the Planetary Society are actually genuinely trying to push it forward as a means of propulsion.
So is this one that's going to launch? Is it just that they're not sending it anywhere. They're literally just going to see whether it actually works and measure how fast it goes and its acceleration.
They're just trying to get some telemetry back because even though they've been through computer models, they've been through all the maths, but from past people who have launched, so they're trying to get stats back from the launch of the CubeSat. And they've got other people who have launched CubeSats as well, but for different reasons, different research projects. So they're trying to get that bit sorted, and obviously the sale unpacking and all of that stuff. They're trying to get telemetry on that, but of course, this is the bigger issue: is that if they might not be able to get the telemetry back to the ground station because of this bug in the stability control.
Yeah, that's a shame.
It is.
I mean, that's a really interesting story, but to be honest, I think what interests me more about that is the CubeSat idea. I like that it's a sort of a standard payload dimensions. That seems like a really good idea, so that basically you can get lots of different methods of launching things into space. And if you've got a standardized set of payloads, you can say, right, we have space for 10 CubeSats. Rather than it being sort of like, I imagine at the moment what it is that they have a certain payload size and people build to that size and fit as much as they can in there, which will take a lot of logistical, organization and making sure it fits and all this sort of thing. Whereas if there's a standard and that's what they can carry, it means it's a lot easier to measure what you can get up there, and you make it fit into that box before actually shipping it off to them. You know it's going to fit.
Absolutely, and if you're designing an experiment that needs to go into space for a specific place, you can already budget for how much it's going to cost, because you can say to the people who are going to deploy it, it'll fit here, and it'll weigh this.
Yeah.
And you can say, well, this is how much it costs, and it's not going to go up, so you can budget to that.
The space station's a bit like that, though, isn't it, with its modular approach? I mean, not as much as that, but it's...
It is, but I think in the space station, the modular, I don't think it's that every module is the same size. They're just sort of standard connectors and this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the modular approach, it makes sense for this sort of thing. Interesting.
But there is, the CubeSat.org is the site for the CubeSat, and there do seem to be quite a lot of launches that are happening, and they're all using this CubeSat. I'm rapidly trying to find some pictures. I can't at the moment. The one, obviously the thing is they're trying to use it as a method of propulsion, so it doesn't have to carry its own fuel up. But of course there is a major fundamental problem with this, is that you can only go a certain amount, so far, where the sun disappears. Well, no, supposedly it's quite fast. Supposedly you can attain very high speeds
eventually, but the acceleration will be. Although I suppose most sort of deep space objects of any propulsion, the actual thrust they've got is small. It's just consistent, which is how the speeds build up. So it'd be interesting to know what length of time it would take something to get to Mars or something like that, compared to things they've sent there before.
Yeah, well. And there you have it, because I think Mars is about the periphery of what it can actually do, because the sun, the effect on the sun on it will actually decrease. So as it moves further and further out, the photons won't have such an effect on it. So you can whiz it around our part of but as soon as you go further and further out, although to be fair, they are stating that they can go further out, but I don't see how, because the whole point of it is it needs the sun.
As long as it gets the speed up while it's getting the power from the sun, then it just coasts.
I was going to say, do you not just orbit Earth until you get the power shot out, basically?
Yeah, but of course, then once you've got no way of like
maneuvering.
Changing the trajectory. You just have to say, well, I'm going straight, and if I've made a miscalculation by X, then I'm going to go way past whatever object I'm trying to look at. Or
to decelerate as well is probably going to take some energy, isn't it? So In fact,
But,
I'm not going to take almost as much energy as the acceleration, I guess. Not going to be far off, is it?
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
of
that's the
course.
thing.
And if you
Sending anything any long distances, usually they'll do at least a few fly pasts of planets and stuff like that to gain energy from gravity swing. It's called the swing flyby thing. So yeah, but slowing down, yeah, you have to be caught by gravity and then go in orbit, I suppose.
But what I did want to say before I finish up on this topic is that Carl Sagan came up with this topic in the early 70s, and there was a YouTube clip of him on the Johnny Carson show in America with a mock-up of this sail.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
And just Johnny Carson is the most bemused man I've ever seen. It's just because he actually comes up with this sort of like balsa wood and tin foil model, puts it on his table, and Johnny Carson's just like, why did you get this madman in? But yeah, so I'll keep my eyes peeled.
Sorry, what was that? This month?
20th, yes, 20th of May. So I'll keep a lookout and see if I can get something there. To be honest, their website's all right, and they do have a blog on it, and that's the guy who seems to be doing lots of the technical blogging about the whole light sail. He basically he's described all of the issues about the spinning, the lack of stability control, how much the window they've got to send back data, how much data is. I think it's like a 323 bytes or something. The amount of data they have to. It's 343K that they have to send back. But the communications get cut in half because they lose the signal every time. So they've had to do all this maths about how long it's going to take them to get a photograph back.
Yeah.
So they reckon that they can. I think it said, it's equivalent of it's a 9600 baud rate transmission to get the data back. So it's going to take them a while.
So no live HD video.
Yeah.
No.
Is it going to be
I don't
about the quality of Ross's stream? Do you think?
Yeah, if that. So yes, that's what I thought I'd end up with this week. Something out of the mind of Carl Sagan.
And what a mind!
And what a mind! Yes. Okay, well that is the end of episode 24 of The Wonder of Stuff. Thank you very much for watching. I noticed we haven't had any live viewers, even though I put a lot of spam around this week about getting live viewers in. I noticed Rob hasn't even come on this week, which normally he does. But hopefully we'll get some live viewers for next time. If you've enjoyed it or hated it, tell us anyway. As always, we've got an email address of thewonderofstuff@gmail.com. We've got a blog where all the show notes go, and that's wonderofstuff.blogspot.com. We've also got our Twitter handles, which we've had on all evening, apart from Ross for some reason.
Not again.
He said his banner. You've got your banner, but you haven't got your Twitter handle on. So anyway, so until next time, everybody have a good week, and we'll see you then. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.